The Pierre Andre Memorial Studio at the Museum of Broadcast Communications is where we do our Those Were the Days program every Saturday afternoon. And we are delighted this Saturday afternoon to have a very special guest. She's Bernice Martin Wallace, a Chicago area resident who, lo and behold, starred in a lot of radio dramas during the good old days. Bernice, we're glad to have you here.
Well, hi, Chuck. It's a pleasure to be here.
So delightful to see you down here at our studio to talk about the radio days.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Need a little more volume on Bernice's mic. Come in a little closer there.
Okay.
Better?
It's okay with me.
Okay. bring that up. Okay. Now, you started working in radio. Well, I guess it's a delicate subject. I don't want to bring it up too.
It's okay.
Is it?
Okay. Everybody that knows me knows how old I am. It's all right.
Well, you started back in 1941, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So you did freelance work in Chicago on a variety of soap operas and other shows, right?
Yes. And I did commercials, too.
Mm-hmm.
The sad part was that the commercials didn't give us residuals in those days.
That's right.
And we did it, and that was it. And no matter how many times it went on, it made no difference as far as money was concerned.
Well, what was your first radio job?
My first radio job was with the Romance of Trent.
It was.
That was the first audition I went on, and fortunately, I got the audition. And I have to tell you, Chuck, they asked me whether I was a member of AFRA. And, of course, I didn't even know what AFRA was, never, And I told them I was not, and they said, well, you better join because you'll go on the air tomorrow. And I asked how much it would cost, and they said $50, and I sort of gulped because in 41 it wasn't that easy to get, $50.
And you weren't being paid $50 for that job either.
No, but we were paid $45 for a broadcast, which included 1 hour of rehearsal. Mm-hmm. We usually, we started in the studio at 10:30, got the script, marked it, and went over the script twice probably, and then we went on the air at 11:30 at the Wrigley Building at CBS.
Oh yeah,
it was
great.
WBBM. At WBBM, that's right. Yeah, that was great.
But now you say you auditioned for and got a role on The Romance of Helen Trent. Had you done any other acting or radio work before that? Tell us about that.
No, I didn't do radio work. Somebody suggested to me that I go and sign up for some auditions and go to some of the advertising agencies, and they called me for this particular audition, and I was just fortunate enough to get it. I guess I maybe did something that was a little different than the other girls. I gave it somewhat of a Brooklyn accent, and it had a little comedy relief to the part.
What was the role that you got?
I played the part of Ginger Leroy, Helen Trent's secretary. And it was a fun part. It was, comedy and cute, and I enjoyed it very much. The people were wonderful. Gil Whitney was the romantic male, and of course that was played in those days by Marvin Miller, who went on to be the millionaire.
Oh yes,
remember that
on television?
On television.
Yeah. Well, he was the man who handed out the checks for the millionaire.
Well,
right.
all right. Anybody that would hand me $1 million check would be the millionaire.
That's right.
But he was around, and Mike Wallace was around, famous for 60 Minutes, and there were a lot of people, a lot of wonderful people in that particular era. Virginia Clark played the part of The Romance of Helen Trent. And then, of course, there were other shows that I did. However, I then went on to do... I was Betty Crocker on NBC.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Ah.
And...
did you get all of the...
recipes?
The recipes?
No.
And did you get all...
I gave some of mine. So that's what I did, and I did other commercials. I did a lot of Wholesome Bread commercials, and they're still writing them and doing them. And the W. Long Company, I guess, is still in existence here. And 13 days after my first daughter was born, which was in 1948, I went down to the studio, and I did the first Dial soap commercial.
What was that? Give Dial a trial today?
Give Dial a trial or something. But it was wonderful. I sat down in a chair and I did it, and it was great.
Well, you've been in and out of the broadcast world over the years. Then you ever do anything now? You still dabble a little bit?
I tell you what I have been doing through the years. I worked in different charitable organizations, and we put on shows, and I directed them and I acted in them. And then there was a period there, the Chicago Board of Rabbis and the Catholic Diocese and the Protestant Church, they had a program on Saturday nights on WBBM starting at 9 o'clock at night, and I would always do the shows for the Board of Jewish Rabbis. And do you recall the name Father Banahan?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Well, Father John Banahan, right?
John Banahan, who he still must be around because I read about him in Cup's
He
column
was
a lot.
here at the museum a year or two ago when the museum did a memorial service for Fran Allison.
Oh, really?
Yes, and in fact we broadcast it, and Father Banahan was here as part of that.
Yeah, he was a wonderful man.
Sure.
Well, he handled the part for the Catholic Archdiocese, and he one night he called me frantically. It was a Thursday, and he said, I have nobody to play the part of Sister Bernadette. Would you please play the part for me? And I said, Father, it would be a pleasure if you'll bring me the script. And he came over. But it was wonderful doing the show. But at the end of the show, they did give credits. And at that time, I was married to my first husband, who last name was Handelman, and he said the part of Sister Bernadette was played by Bernice O. Handelman. It was just adorable. He had a great sense of humor. But,
well, you sound like you had a good time with the radio days, didn't you?
I did. I wasn't sorry it was over because everything, then I went into another era, started raising my family and did things. But it's always, I've always had pleasure out of some of the things I did and some of the things I'm doing now.
You worked probably at the Merchandise Mart for
at
NBC, WMAQ, and WENR, I suppose, and maybe at the Tribune for WGN.
At the Tribune, sure.
Did you ever get caught with the bridge up? You know that? You know that story?
Once, and I got out and walked. It was really not funny. Not funny. But I always try to be very, very early, and I could just see the CBS studio, though. It was just like a little square room, and then directly in front was an enclosed box where you could have visitors. And invariably, if I'd be on, I would lift up my eyes from the sheet of paper, and there was my mother, maybe with a girlfriend or somebody to see the show.
Come down to see you do it.
Really, it was nice.
Now, these shows were not necessarily open to the public, they had that. You were glad.
It was a 15, it wasn't.
Many of the shows had to be done a second time to accommodate the changes in the time zones. Did you ever have that problem with Helen Trent?
No. Only
your
one.
time was such that it could be heard across the country.
And I know I have family in Buffalo, New York, who always were thrilled because if they'd be listening to the program to hear me. And so it was the same time,
Did the character that you played, Ginger Leroy, was that a regular character from that time on now for a while?
They called it a running part. And yes. It wasn't regular because I was not on every day. I was lucky if I was on sometimes twice a week, and maybe once a week sometimes, depending what the script was. And, of course, if Helen Trent was in her office, But it was but it was a fun thing to do. Did that program really prove that romance need not be over even though a woman is 35 years of age? Well, I'll vouch to that. Anytime. What kind of reaction that you might have become aware of did the show receive from the audience, the listening audience? Oh, well, I talk to people even now who remember their mothers or grandparents or somebody. Oh, my goodness, we always had it on in our house, People were glued to the radio in those days. It was a great way to, you use your imagination. And, of course, I get a kick out of listening to some of the tapes now. It's a different kind of acting nowadays. Everything is more natural, and there was a lot of overacting, and the announcing was very dramatic. Yes, well, the announcers in comparison, were right. You always were pushing, punching. Yeah, right, right. Well, there's more naturalness, as you say, today. But in those days, the epitome of
radio was the announcer. I mean, you always, visualized a Tony Martin or somebody tall and very, very much in control. In fact, indeed, the sponsor was kind of in control, or the announcer was kind of in control as he read that sponsor's product. Now, did you, as one of the actors on the show, ever get to take home some of the sponsor's product? Did they ever give you a package of goodies? They never did, huh?
Come to think of it, no.
They just paid you off, and that was all you needed.
That was it. Yeah. I have a nice a letter that the director had sent me. He went into the Navy, and a very fine person named Blair Wallace, he wrote me a beautiful letter because he knew this was the beginning for me and thanked me for the work and wished me well, and it was very nice. There was nice camaraderie between people.
Over the years, I have heard from so many people who worked in Chicago about Blair Wallace.
Really?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
They have said that he was really a nice person to work with, easy to get along with, not outwardly demanding, yet if what he wanted, he could convey that message to his actors very easily and get what he wanted.
I often think about, think of certain different people and wonder where they are, what happened to them, but you do lose touch. You can't help it. AFRA, in those days it was AFRA. There was
American
no Federation of Radio Artists, and now it's AFTRA for television and radio artists. But they had, in those days, they'd have a beauty contest or something once a year in some kind of an affair. Well, I wasn't chosen queen. A girl by the name of Angel Casey was queen. I don't know what happened to her. She was a beautiful blonde girl. And then I was one of the runner-ups.
Oh.
So that was my...
And I can understand that, too.
Oh, thank you thanks very much. But Kay Westfall and I were the runner-ups. So they had the blonde queen and the two brunettes. But anyway, it was fun.
I have seen some copies of a publication or a booklet called... that was distributed at AFTRA's annual show called the Antics, AFTRA Antics.
Oh, really?
And in there they would have photographs of all of the AFTRA people, AFRA people over the years. So I'm going to have to go back and see if I can find your photograph.
I don't know, it was in the early 40s. There's a picture. Well, you won't know it's me, but it's there.
Well, you're so nice to spend a little time coming down on a Saturday afternoon to talk about this stuff.
I'm delighted. I've listened to you so many times. I'm delighted I had the pleasure of meeting you.
Well, thank you. I always like to meet the listeners, too. And it's always double special when a listener is someone who contributed to the radio days. Unfortunately, the episode of The Romance of Helen Trent that we have is not... does not have Helen's secretary in it. And there are so few episodes of Helen Trent around. I keep looking for one for you if I can find one with Ginger Leroy. You worked 5 years on this show?
Well, from 41 till about 46. Most of the things were taken out of Chicago at that time and started emanating from New York. So that was it.
Well,
that was it.
We're going to take our listeners back with us now. You said Chicago must have been about 11:30 in the morning when this was on.
Yes. And those were the days.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I want to thank you, Bernice Martin, for being with us today.
Thank you,
it's very nice to have you here.
It was very nice being here.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
This is a long-running... Thank you very much. It was a long-running soap opera, ran from 1933 to 1960. Frank and Ann Hummert once again. In this particular episode, we have Julie Stevens as Helen Trent, David Gothard as Gil Whitney, and Mary Jane Higby as Cynthia. That familiar theme song, Juanita, the guitar and the humming, something different than the usual organ music. You have a guitar strumming and then hum the tunes of Juanita. Nita, Juanita, ba ba bum 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 bum. Bernice, did that take you back?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Well, let's take you all back now for The Romance of Helen Trent.